Hey Joey, this is Mr. Coughlin. I'm recording from my basement here. I got a copy of your test. I want to take a look. I'm looking at it on screen. The first page looks reasonably good. You've got the forms memorized. You've got rise over run. Intercept is where a line meets an axis, correct? And you're counting rise over run for number four and number five looks good. When we get to the next page, need to go through a couple of things. Looks as if, let me see. Let me go through number six real fast. Some of these can be cleared up just by watching the arithmetic mistakes. Let me see. This is 2 points, -10, comma -9. And then the other point is 6, comma 16. Let me switch over to the right screen here. Okay, so, and I hope you can see this. This is a new document camera. It has a hard time focusing it. There we go. So how do you find the slope between these two? You don't absolutely have to graph, but it's a good idea to graph. -10, -9, make sure you mark these. So it's 10 to the left and 9 down. And then 6, comma 16, again, you can kind of fake what that is. So I want to know the slope from here to here. Slope is rise over run. So how much does it rise versus how much does it run? So how many spaces is it from -9 to +16? Well, there are 9 spaces below and 16 more spaces above. So that's going to be 25. And that's going to be positive because it's going uphill. And going from -10 to +16, that's going to be a distance of 16. So this, and it's positive because you're going to the right. So the slope is 25 over 16. And in your answer, you had 28 over 6, which would not be correct. So, and 25 over 16 does not reduce. But you see how that worked? You rise and run from one point to the other. That means you got to really double check your math. Number 7, same sort of thing. -9, comma 16 and 5, comma -20. I have to flip back and forth between two different screens here. So that looks like this. Again, make sure your X's and Y's aren't mixed up and you get them in the wrong spot. Let's just call this -9, and then 16 is up here. Let me put it up here, I guess. So here's the dot at -9, comma 16. 5, comma -20 would be like 5 to the right, 20 down. So like here. And I want to know the slope here. You notice it's going downhill. So the rise is going to be negative. Now, how far is it from 16 to -20? Well, there's 16 spaces above and 20 more spaces below. So this is going to be a drop of 36. So the rise is -36. And then over, how far is it from -9 to 5? Well, 9 spaces on the left and 5 more spaces on the right, which is 14. So the slope is going to be -36 over 14. That does reduce a little bit. These cut in half. So -18 over 7. Does that make sense? So, and you had 32 over 9, which so something went a little wrong there. So double check your math on those. Does that make sense? So now, number 8, you seem to be okay with slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, and m is the slope. Now, when you try and get parallel lines, parallel means they have the same slope. Okay. And if you have the same slope, you've got to check the original slope and make sure it's the same one. So if you have y equals 3 halves x, and I think you got this one right, -2, I'm going to do plus -2 because it'll fit the form with plus b. Here's your slope. So the old line is a slope of 3 over 2. So the parallel line also has a slope of, this is like slope parallel, that's what that means. So the slope parallel is also 3 over 2. that make sense? So where things start getting a little sticky is when it's in standard form. Standard form looks like ax plus, and I'm sorry, it's just so blurry. Let me get that a little bit better. Let me see if I can focus that just a teeny bit more. We'll see. If it doesn't work too much, I'll see if I can zoom it in. But standard form is ax plus by equals c. And what's the slope? They don't give it to you. There is no m in here. That means you have to manually get y by itself in order to do it. So if, for example, on number 9, they give you, I'm sorry, on number 11, this was number 10, I guess. Oh no, it was number 8. Okay. So jumping to number, sorry, this thing zoomed out on me. Yeah, given this, find this, number 9, they just said find the slope. So they have 7x minus 3y equals 12. I'm going to add the opposite. You see why? Because it's got to be ax plus by equals c. That means that a is equal to 7, b is equal to -3, c is equal to 12. Just so we're all clear. So a, b, c. Now, again, it doesn't give you the slope on a silver platter. You got to earn it. You got to work for it. You got to get y by itself. How do you use that with algebra? Anytime you're doing with algebra, you always cancel what's farthest away from your target first, not counting the answer. Don't attack that. So what's farthest away from y? 7x. They're welded together. How do you get rid of 7x? I can't just divide by 7 because that'll get rid of the 7 and leave the x. I can't divide by x because that gets rid of the x and leaves the 7. How do I get rid of both? Subtract 7x. But you have to do the same thing to both sides. These will cancel. So negative, don't forget the negatives there. -3y equals -7x plus 12, because 12 is positive. Could you write this as 12 minus 7x like this? Yes. You have to add the opposite anyway. And you'll need to switch it around in order to get it in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. So I like to have the x term before the number term. Anyway, back to this. -3y equals -7x plus 12. Again, I want y by itself. You get rid of the -3, but they multiplied it on. Don't try and add 3. It doesn't work because that would be y minus 3. They didn't subtract 3. They multiplied by -3. So you divide by -3 everywhere. Let's see what happens. These cancel. Y equals negative divided by negative is positive. 7 over 3 times x plus 12 divided by -3 is -4. And this is your slope, 7 over 3. And you would put 3 over 7. So make sure you're not just guessing based on the numbers and what they look like. Make sure you actually do the work and see, because sometimes it's going to be the upside down version of what you expect, or it might be a negative version of what you expect. You just don't know. Okay. Number 10 was okay because you seem to be good with slope intercept form. 11, we got some issues again because this is standard form again. So 2x minus y equals 1. They want to find the slope that's parallel. Whoops, I should write that the other way. The parallel slope, and we don't know it yet. So we got to find the slope here, and then parallel means use the exact same slope. Well, I can't do that until I get the slope by itself. I want to get y by itself. How? You can subtract 2x from both sides. Don't add 2x. People get fooled by the subtract. They're not subtracting 2x. That'd be over here. They're subtracting y, and we're not touching that yet. So subtract 2x. These cancel. So you have negative y, don't forget there's a negative there, equals 1 minus 2x, but I'm going to write it as -2x plus 1. How do you get this negative out of the way? Remember, there's an invisible 1 here. They multiplied y by -1. So you divide by -1 absolutely everywhere. So cancel y equals negative divided by negative is positive. 2 divided by 1 is 2. X plus 1 divided by -1 is -1. And your slope is 2. So your parallel slope is also 2, or 2 over 1. And you would put 1 over 2. So make sure you don't just guess based on the numbers here. Do the work. Do the work. Oops, let me scoot this up so you can actually see. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. Now, perpendicular slope. I want to make sure you know what perpendicular slope is. Perpendicular slope is the opposite reciprocal of the original slope. Okay. So just as an example, I'll take number 12. Number 12 looks like this. I'll put it up here. Y equals negative 2x minus 4. Now, again, I like doing the opposite. So y equals mx plus b. The original slope we have here, it's in slope-intercept form, so it's easy to see. It's negative 2. So how do you get the perpendicular slope? The perpendicular slope is, because this is really negative 2 over 1, opposite means switch the sign. And reciprocal means upside down. More specifically, an upside down fraction. Okay. So how do you do that? Flip the fraction upside down and switch the sign. So if it goes from negative, it'll turn to positive. And then flip it upside down. So it'll be positive 1/2. And that's your perpendicular slope. Now you had 2 over 4. I think you were trying to do a division problem with these numbers. I would not. 4 was never used in this problem. Never, ever, ever. So it just happened to be the same answer, but I would have taken off points for not having it reduced. And the fact that you used 4 in there suggests to me that you were trying to use this somehow, and it was never used with slope. Slope-intercept form has this and this only. Let me show you number 13. 13, again, has some issues because it's in wow, I can't talk today. In standard form, 6x plus y equals 4. Let's see what happens. Again, there are some shortcut formulas that I'm not sure it would be wise for you to use them at this point, because I think you're getting some of the letters confused. So I would say just get y by itself, even if it takes a little extra time. Don't be afraid of the extra time. Again, how do you get a slope? Get y by itself, because I have no idea what the slope is right now. Subtract 6x from both sides. So we're going to get, down here, these cancel, 1y equals negative 6x plus 4. Now the 1y is just y, so you don't even have to divide by 1 unless you want to. It doesn't do anything. Your slope is negative 6. So the slope is negative 6. What is the perpendicular slope? Well, if you make this a fraction, you have to in order to do the reciprocal. Flip it upside down and switch the sign. Right now it's negative, switch it to positive. So the new slope you want is 1 over 6, and you would put negative 6 over 1. So be careful there. You got the original slope. I think trying to use that shortcut formula we had covered in class. I would not use the shortcut formulas. I would just get y by itself, even if it takes an extra minute. Trust me, it's a lot better than getting the wrong answer. So there's 13. And let me flip to the next page. Sketch the graph of the line. Okay. Number 14. This is switching a little bit of a topic here. Let me see if I can get some space here. Number 14 is talking about y equals negative 1/5 x plus 3. And let's sketch the line. You got the y-intercept correct. So actually, if you have your copy of the test that you took, you might want to get this out and check. You got the y-intercept correct, but the slope is negative 1/5, negative 1 over 5. They wrote it as like this. They put the negative in front. Don't miss it for one thing. It's very easy to miss. It looks like it's blending in with this the fraction bar, but I always add the opposite. Put the negative on top. -1/5, which means you go down 1, you drop 1 into the right 5. There's your next point, and you can draw your line. You had gone down 1 and left 5, which was, that would have been -1/-5, which is a different answer, and that would be going uphill. Any slope that's negative has to be going downhill, so that's another way you can check. Okay. Now, number 15, things got a little jumbled. Y equals -8x minus 4. Let me show you what you did. On your test, you put a y-intercept of -4, which is correct, but then you use the -8 as, I'm not quite sure. You put a dot at 8, +8. So I'm not sure where that came from. The slope is -8/1, which means you would have to drop 8 spaces. Remember, it's rise over run. So you rise -8 and you run +1. Now that's way off screen. What you could do instead is go up 8, run it backwards. Go up 8 and left 1. That's actually what I did. It'll give you the same line either way. It's going to be a very, very steep downhill line. Okay, so here's your original point at -4. You can either go down 8 and right 1, so rise over run, or you can go up 8 and left 1, which is going backwards from this. Does that make sense? So, but you can't go over here. That wouldn't give you a slope of -8/1. So remember, y equals mx plus b, slope, and then the y-intercept. So you do the y-intercept first for your starting point, and then obey the rise over run. Obey the rise over run. Don't try and just use the numbers and hope they work. So all of these have a predictable pattern. Just make sure you use them. Going to number 16, let me scroll up to that. 1x plus, oh boy, I gotta zoom in here. Okay, so it's x plus y equals -4. This is number 16. X plus y equals -4. Now, again, excuse me. Sorry about that. A couple ways to run this. You could try chubby hand method because this is standard form, which is, it's a nickname for finding the x and y intercepts. Blank comma 0, 0 comma blank. So you pretend that y is 0 and covered up and see what x is. If you notice, x is -4. Now pretend that x is 0 and covered up. And you find out that y is -4. So that's one way to graph this thing. You'll have an x-intercept, excuse me, at -4 comma 0. And then you have a y-intercept of 0 comma -4. And you have a line going downhill. Does that make sense? So there's your line. Now, if you want to try the get y by itself method, you can. I'll show you how to do that. It's kind of like what we're doing on the previous page. Subtract x from both sides because you're trying to get y by itself. So you now get y equals -x minus 4. And there's an invisible 1 in front of the x. So -1x minus 4. I'm going to do plus -4. The slope, if you make it a fraction, is -1/1. So watch what happens. Y-intercept of -4. Got it. Then you do rise over run. You rise -1, so go down 1, and you run 1 to the right, which is positive. And there is your line, which is pretty much the same line as this, just further down. Does that make sense? So you got to pick one of the two ways. If you want to stick with slope-intercept form, make sure you know how to get y by itself, and make sure you know how to read the slope and the y-intercept. So the y-intercept to do first. Oh, I should have started. Yeah, that's 4. So mark it as -4. And then this is -5 because you go down 1, right 1. So you either, there you go, use the chubby hand method, which you can use for graphing standard form. Chubby hand method is just basically pretend one of the letters is 0 and find the other one. That's called finding an intercept. or just get y by itself and use slope-intercept form. Okay. Now, over here for number 17, again, this is standard form. So 17, 1x minus 2y equals negative 6. I'm going to add the opposite because it's supposed to be ax plus by equals c. Your choice. You can either do chubby hand method, which means find the x and y intercepts, or you can get y by itself. It's easier with the chubby hand method here, but I'm going to go y by itself because I think you might be a little more comfortable with it. Subtract 1x from both sides. Cancel. Negative 2y equals negative 1x plus negative 6, because this is at the opposite. Negative. Now divide everything by negative 2, because this is not y minus 2. Don't add 2 and try and get away. They multiplied it by negative 2, so you divide by negative 2. Cancel. Y equals negative over negative is positive. 1/2 x plus negative over negative is positive, positive 3. So let's see what that looks like. Y-intercept of 3. Got it. And then the rise of a run is up 1 and to the right 2. There's your line. That makes sense? Okay. Again, if you want to do the chubby hand method, you could, which is basically pretending one letter is 0 and the other is blank. If you do that, like pretend that y is 0 for a second, and you just get x equals negative 6. And if you pretend that x is 0, you get negative 2y is negative 6. And if you actually solve that with a little algebra, you get y equals 3. So you get a y-intercept of 3 and an x-intercept of negative 6, which would give you the exact same line, just further along. Does that make sense? Okay. Scrolling along. Next page. Number 18. You do have to get comfortable with, let me see if this works. Point slope form. Point slope form is y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. I would just drill a bunch of these. Like make up x's, x1, make up y1, and make up a slope, and graph, graph, graph. Get comfortable with this and memorize the form. Don't hope for the best and just memorize slope-intercept form and hope everything else is going to work. It will not. This, for example, if you have, on like a number 18, y minus 2 equals negative 2/3, parentheses x minus 4, you're going to have to know how to read that. First of all, this, add the opposite. So the slope is negative 2/3. And the starting point, x1 and y1, which is the point you're starting from, a starting point, in this case is x1 is whatever's after the minus sign. It's 4, comma, and a y1 is whatever's after the minus sign. It's 2. It's not negative 4, negative 2. The minus signs belong in the formula. Leave them there. So the starting point is 4, comma 2. See what that looks like. You actually physically go to 4, comma 2, 4 to the right, 2 up, and there's your starting point. Does that make sense? And then you use your slope, rise negative 2, which is actually going down 2, and then run 3, this is 4, and there's your line. So point slope form is actually quite easy if you can spot the pieces and know what they mean. So don't just look at the numbers and start throwing all over the graph. These mean something. This is the slope, which you use later. And these pieces give you your starting point. Always the x part first and the y part second. Okay. Let's take a look at number 19, where they actually throw in some plus signs. It's the same sort of form. Y plus 4 equals 3/5, parentheses x plus 3. Okay. Now, this is not in the correct form. You notice it's supposed to be y minus, and it's supposed to be x minus. I need to change this plus to a minus, but do it legally. Y plus a regular 4 is the same as y minus a negative 4. Add the opposite. And then it's equal to 3/5. The slope is fine. Here we have to fix it again. X minus negative 3. So be careful. The slope, let me get my hand out there so you can actually see. The slope here is 3/5. You didn't have to do anything to that. But x1, y1 are negatives this time. It's whatever is after the subtract sign and whatever is after the subtract sign. So it's going to be negative 3 comma negative 4. That's where you start. That's your starting point. Let's see what it looks like. So you go 3 to the left, so negative 3, and then negative 4 is down 4, and there's your starting point. That's this. Yeah, there you go. And then use your slope. So you rise 3. So your slope is 3/5. You rise 3 and you run 5. 1, 2, 3, and then 2 more spaces will make 5. And there's your line. Okay. Once you get used to finding the starting point, it becomes easy. Then you can just use the slope, excuse me, in order to find the second point. Does that make sense? Let me grab some water real fast here. So, pardon me. Still have some phlegm in my throat. Sorry about that. Let's take a look at number 20. These are the last form that you need to know. And this is intercept form, which is x over a plus y over b is equal to 1. This is the last form, and you have to memorize it. You can't try and pretend it's standard form or anything like that. Yeah, a is the x-intercept. B is the y-intercept. So if you know how to read it, it's actually very, very easy to graph. So, and it looks as if you had just one thing wrong with the graph. They gave you x over 4 plus y over negative 2 equals 1. And let's take a look at that. All you have to do is pretend this is the x-intercept. It's positive 4. And intercept is on the axis. So this is just x is 4. And then y is negative 2, which means it's down here. And there's your line. You would put your x-intercept on the wrong side. You'd put it over here. It's not x over negative 4. That would be over here. It's x equals positive 4. Does that make sense? Now, the other one, number 21, looks like this. Y over 5 plus x over negative 1 equals 1. Just be careful. These are in the wrong spots. But addition, you can flip around. It's x over negative 1 plus y over 5 equals 1. That means this is the x-intercept. It's negative 1. This is the y-intercept. Let's see what that looks like. If the x-intercept is negative 1, you go to the left 1. If the y-intercept is 5, that means you go up 5. And there is your line. Okay, that one actually worked pretty well. So you got that one right, so good. Now, number 22, write the slope-intercept form through the given points. Okay, this is going back a little ways. Let's take a look. Number 22. Oops, sorry. This thing is kind of, it's balanced on a TV tray here. Let me see if I can focus this again. Okay. I have just kind of auto focusing. We'll hope that works. So the first one, number 22, the points 1 comma 2 and 2 comma negative 1. Okay. Now these are 2 points that your line is going through. I want to know y equals mx plus b, which means I need to know the slope and I need to know the y-intercept. Getting the slope is not too horrendous. You can actually just sketch it or calculate it, but I'm just going to sketch it because it's easier. So 1 comma 2 is here. I have this paper on a flexible metal board thing. That's why it's kind of funny here. So 1 comma 2, and then 2 comma negative 1, which is over here. So what's the slope? So it goes down 3 and to the right 1. So the slope they're talking about is negative 3 over 1. Does that make sense? So I think you had a slope of 1/2 in your answer. So I think you were just using the 1 and the 2 and just putting them into a fraction. That doesn't work. You have to actually count out the slope. Rise, run. Slope is rise over run. And it's hard to tell that unless you actually take a look at it. There are formulas you can do with it, but graphing it at this point is probably the easiest for you. So what does it look like so far? Remember, when we're doing slope-intercept form, you got to do it 2 parts, 1 part at a time. We've got the slope, so fill it in. You do not have the y-intercept, so leave it B. Leave it as B. So how do you actually get the answer? So this is halfway. You're halfway done. Don't try and get all the way done in one big jump. It will not work. So y equals negative 3. By the way, you could also just write it as y equals negative 3 x plus b. They're both the same thing. Negative 3 over 1 is negative 3. I'm going to try this one just because they'll both work just as easily. This might be a little easy with the algebra. So how do I get b? That means you pick one of these 2 points, whichever one you think is friendliest. I'm going to pick this because it doesn't have any negatives, and plug it in to see what happens. So x is equal to 1 and y is equal to 2. Just try it and see what happens. So y is 2 equals negative 3 times, and x is 1. And I have no idea what b is. But let's calculate. Negative 3 times 1. 2 equals negative 3 plus b. Now, I'm trying to get b by itself. Add 3 to both sides, because this is negative 3. To cancel it, you need a positive 3. 5 equals b. Ta-da! Guess what you can finish now? Y equals negative 3x, which we had already, plus 5. And there's your answer. That's from number 22. Okay. For number 22, you had y equals 1/2 x plus 1/2. Again, I think you were trying to just grab some of these numbers and slap them into fractions, but you have to actually do it by hand. You actually have to do the work. Try the next one real fast. 23. From point 3 comma 2 and a negative 2, negative 2. Again, have to sketch it or do something to find the slope. We don't know the slope yet. It's y equals mx plus b. I don't know the slope. I don't know the y-intercept. And they very, very rarely give you the y-intercept. So you just have to do the work. Again, 3 comma 2, let's do it. 3 comma 2 is here. And then negative 2, negative 2 is here. So what's the slope between that? Let me mark these. So negative 2, negative 2. This is 2, and this is 3. So how far is it from negative 2 to 2? It looks like that's rising 4. And from negative 2 to 3, that's going over 5. Aha. Slope equals rise over run, 4 over 5. We are now halfway done. We have y equals 4/5 x plus b. Okay. So now I don't know what b is, but pick whichever point you think is friendliest and plug it in. I'm going to try 3 comma 2 because it doesn't have any negatives. And then try it. So x is 3 and y is 2. Let's try it. So y is equal to 2 is 4/5 parentheses x is 3 plus b. Now, how do you multiply 4/5 times 3? Fraction times a whole number. Got to make the whole number a fraction. So 2 equals 12 over 5 plus b. One more step. I got to subtract 12/5 from both sides to get b by itself. But that's a little tricky because I need a common denominator. Because I can't add or subtract fractions without a common denominator. It's got to be something over 5. 2 over 1 is the same as 10 over 5 because you're multiplying by 5. So what's 10 over 5 plus negative 12 over 5? These cancel. That's going to be negative 2 over 5 equals b. And that will finish the problem. So we now have y equals whatever the slope we had first. Y equals 4/5 x plus negative 2/5. And we're done. Okay. So that's how you do that. And let me see, number 23, go to the next page. Write the point slope form. Okay. Be careful. You have nothing but numbers in 24 and 25. 24 and 25, you're supposed to have y minus something equals slope, parentheses, x minus something. You must have a y and an x and an equal sign in there. You got the equal sign, but the y and the x disappeared. You need to have those in your final answer. How do you do this? Suppose they have -5, -5, and also -1, 3. Okay. Now, again, the first thing, same thing we were doing over here. Find the slope. There's really no shortcut. Just graph it and count the slope. -5, -5. That'll be like down here. And then -1, 3 is up here. So 1 to the left and 3 up. Let me mark that. So there's the 2 points. How much does it rise from -5 to +3? 5 spaces below, 3 spaces above, that's 8. It's going up, so it's positive. And it's going from -5 to -1. That's going to the right 4. So the slope is 8/4, which is 2. Excuse me. So now we've got half our answer. It looks like this. Y minus something equals 2, parentheses, x minus something. So what do you use for the something? Believe it or not, this is easier. Pick whichever point you think is friendliest. The nice thing about point slope form is because you need a slope and you need a point. You have a point. You can just slam it in and be done. Just remember, this is the x part and this is the y part. Now, you can use -5, -5. That's fine. So here's an answer to this. Y minus 3, that's the y part, equals 2, parentheses, x minus -1. That's your answer. Now, if you were in the mood, you could also use the 5, 5. Y minus -5 equals same slope of 2, x minus -5. Either of these would be perfectly good answers. They're both the exact same line, just one starts up here and one starts down here. It's the exact same line. It's just one's further along. Does that make sense? So you have to find the slope by hand and then put in your slope and then pick whichever point you like best and use that as your starting point. Okay. I'll do one more for 25. And it looks like, see if I can get this thing level. They want point slope form for the line through 3, 4 and -5, -1. Okay. Again, I don't know the slope yet. Let's graph it and find out. 1, 2, 3, and then up 4. Okay. So, and the other one is -5, -1. Got it. So what is the slope? Again, we're finding the slope first. What's the slope from here to here? Is -5 and -1. So how far does it rise from -1 to +4? Like that's going up by 5. And then how far does it run from -5 to 3? That seems to be running 8. And it's positive because it goes to the right. So the slope is 5/8. Okay. Now we can do y minus something equals 5/8, parentheses, x minus something. Now, if you look up here, which of these 2 points is easier? I think 3, 4 is easier. Let's just use that. This is the x and this is the y, like x1, y1. So y minus 4 equals 5/8, which is the slope you fought to get, or x minus 3. That's the easiest answer. You could use the other one if you want. Y minus -1 equals the same slope, 5/8, parentheses, x minus -5. Either one of these is fine. I think the top one's a little easier, but both of them use the same slope, and then just pick whichever point is your favorite and plug in for x1 and y1. Here's x1. Here's y1. Okay. But again, memorize points love form. If you don't have it memorized, it's going to be really painful to do the test. Okay. Now, I think that's it, except for the extra credit. If you want to talk about extra credit some other time, feel free. But for now, I just want to get this out to you so you can work on the main part of the test. So take care. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.